laughing about, they sold everything prior to going to Romania except his grandmother's china. They didn't sell that. He said they still have that. But he and Cammie and the 4 daughters, and they were little, took off to Romania to serve with an organization out of Bakersfield, California. And very soon after they got there, the people that were in charge of that mission there in Bucharest went elsewhere, and suddenly they had the whole mission in their lap. And they never gave up. They just gave their lives to those children and that mission. And he and Cammie formed a mission called Stepping Forward, which you see here, and it is in existence and going. And he'll tell you all about the camp, which that's where Shady Grove fits in. Pat and I went to Romania to work. We would stay 3 to 4 months, and we left the Farmville Church and moved to Shady Grove, and the word got out that we had done some mission work. And I remember Wayne Keaton and some others came and said, "We want to go to Romania, what do you do?" And I said, "Well, I know that Shady Grove is committed to building nails and hammers and things of that nature, but this is not that mission. We're changing diapers of orphaned and abandoned children. We're playing with them. We're playing soccer. We take them to movies. We go to McDonald's. We spread the news of Christ and His love." Oh, okay. Then lo and behold, Steve and Cammie informed us that they had purchased some land up near the Carpathian Mountains and were going to build a camp. And I called Wayne and I said, "Wayne, we're going." And in 2009, Shady Grove became a part of that mission, Stepping Forward, and continues to be through the Elizabeth Circle and Joe White class and individual donations. They just keep coming. And perhaps one day there could be another team to go. Steve and Cammie are currently on furlough, living in Salem, Oregon, which was Steve's home for a long time. And I'm going to sit down now.
Well, thank you, Bruce, and thank you, Shady Grove. Where there's a long history between myself, and I've known Bruce and Pat for 20 years now, and we've known this church community for 14 years. So through sponsoring kids at Christmas time and just general donations and teams. How many times have you been to Romania, Wayne? Probably 7 times.
Yes, sir.
No church in this country that I visit that support us has made a bigger commitment to coming to Romania. So I wanted to make sure as I travel around the country these next few months that I got to stop here and see all you guys. So first of all, a huge thank you. I know it's a big deal to, you know, have a mission that you support for this long of time. Normally churches, they kind of, you know, Eastern Europe kind of falls out of favor, and now it's Africa or, you know, Central America. So it's great that you continue to support us in what we do. So anyway, I'm going to talk for about 15 more minutes and give you kind of an overview about what we do in Romania, and then I want to leave some time so that you can ask questions more specifically. So anyway, this is our mission, Stepping Forward Ministries. My wife and I started it in 2005, so it's still going strong. Like Bruce said, we moved to Romania in 2000 with our 4 kids. I'm a manufacturing engineer. I had a real job at one time, and worked in the world's largest carrot factory in California. And we just woke up one day and said, you know, the Lord's calling us to Romania, a country we had never been to before. And we just sold our house and all of our stuff and got on the plane and moved to Romania. And like Bruce said, we thought, well, this would be a 3-year adventure, which has turned out to be now a 23-year adventure. So everyone asked me about sacrificing. Like, isn't it a sacrifice to leave America with all of our comforts and wonderful things here to move to Romania? And I can tell you that it has not been a sacrifice. Sorry, last year was a very intense year with Ukraine and and I'm getting emotional, so we'll just move on. Okay, the first thing I want to talk about are these kids. The orphanage life in Romania is unfortunately alive and well. There's still about 60,000 children in Romania that are abandoned. And I like to say abandoned instead of orphan kids, because most of these kids are not truly orphaned. Only about 20% of the 60,000 are truly orphaned. The rest are just abandoned. Unfortunately, in Romania, the culture of abandoning your children to the orphanage is very acceptable. It's not looked down upon if you decide to abandon your children at birth or at any point along the way. And being foster parents is not a good thing necessarily. Like, they're confused, like, why on earth would you want to take somebody else's kids into your house? So it's not like America where, oh, you're foster parents, so that's great. It's kind of the opposite there. So what we do, now there used to be buildings, there used to be orphanages that you would go to. There was about 300 orphanages in the country when we moved there in 2000. And probably, I would guess now, there's maybe only 50 or 60. What the government has done is move the kids out of the institutional buildings and put them in apartments. The government has apartments in cities and towns, and they just take the social workers and maybe 10 kids and put them in an apartment so that they kind of have a more normal life in an apartment rather than being in this building. But the problems that they have with being abandoned, if they were abandoned at birth, then they have social problems. They have problems with school. They have problems, the brains haven't developed properly. They were, you've all seen the videos on CNN about the kids rocking in the corner, the babies abandoned in their cribs with the bottles tied to the crib. I mean, that's all real. We still see some of that today. Anyway, and if you're abandoned later in life, the kids have anger issues. If they're abandoned at 8, 10 years old, then they're upset, like, why did my parents leave me? A lot of times the families will have many kids, and they'll take some to the orphanage and some will stay home, and then they'll trade them out, like usually the week before Christmas, and it's just a horrific situation. But anyway, this is an example of what we do. We take the kids, we have a center, we have our own building that we take the kids to now, and it's easier to bring the kids to us, and we can have more control over what we do. And we do all the kinds of things that you would expect. It's kind of like a VBS type of situation. We do Bible studies and crafts and games and things. Speaking of Bible studies, these kids grow up like kids do. And these are all young women that are now mothers themselves. A lot of these women in this picture are been trafficked, sexual traffic situation. Despite what we try to do with these kids, how kids are. You can tell them that they shouldn't do things, but then oftentimes they do things anyway, and they eventually get themselves in trouble, find themselves in a situation that they don't want to be in, and they'll call us up and say, hey, I'm 21 years old now, and I'm being trafficked, and I need a safe place to live. I've got a baby, or whatever the situation is. And so we obviously do everything we can to help them and get them into, usually these kids have to hit rock bottom. You've heard all this before. They've got to get to a really low point in their life, and then they're ready to start moving up. So that's good. This is an example of a woman that's been trafficked and her kids, and we provide a place for them to live, a few of them that we have money and able space. So that's good. So that's kind of the Bucharest ministry. We have five missionary groups in our mission now, and three of those work in Bucharest with kids and trafficked women. This is the camp.
Could you tell us what you mean by trafficking?
Trafficked women are usually women that they started out working at a club, let's say they were a hostess or a server at a club, and then that club owner or persons there at the club would take them into either, not to get too graphic, but usually into some sort of a trafficking situation in the Middle East or in other countries where they were being prostituted, basically, against their will. And so these women get into these situations where they're really held like against their will, and usually in other countries, or even in Romania in some cases. We've rescued 2 women that secretly contacted us, and one in particular, Anna, a girl that now works for us, who was leading this Bible study. This girl right here with the Bible on the right, her name's Anna. She works with our organization. I'll just tell you a brief story. She came to camp when she was in the orphanage, and we give out Bibles to all the kids, and my wife put her phone number in the cover of the Bible when she was 16 years old, when she was 21, and in a traffic situation where she was being held against her will in an apartment in Bucharest. She was able to call the phone number, get in touch with my wife, and then they met secretly. And the next day, we went at 5 o'clock in the morning when their person that was holding her was asleep, and she escaped. And we got in the car and drove to our apartment, and she had 2 little bags, 1 bag of clothes and 1 bag of shoes. And that's all she was able to bring. That's all she had, really. Anyway, so that's a situation where she was being trafficked, and we were able to get her out. Anyway, we'll move on here. So, now we're back to the camp. Our ministry started in the orphanages, and we were able to do work with them, like I said, on the weekends, after school. It was a VBS kind of ministry, and we thought, we really need to take these kids out of the city. Bucharest is a city of about 2.5 million people. It's a dark, not so pretty city that is just not so fun. And so we thought, we'll take these kids to a camp. I'm an Eagle Scout, and I like camping. My wife's an outdoor person, and we thought, we should get some land, and we should have a place for these kids to go for a week. So in 2006, we bought 24 acres of land, and I'm talking about trees, rocks, dirt, creek. I mean, it was just bare land, about 5 miles away from the nearest town, nearest human being. And so it was been a challenge. You can see now a heated swimming pool. I mean, literally on land that was nothing, almost 20 years ago. So we bought this land. Cabin back there on the left is what we call Cabin 1. It's an exciting name for cabins, but there's Cabin 1 and Cabin 2. Shady Grove. Basically, I built most of those cabins. Built all kinds of things here at the camp. And this is an example of, now we have space for about 100 people total. We usually have about 60 kids and 30 to 40 staff people. Teams from America come. So they're all in this group. So, I don't know, 80 to 100. And we've had 104 as our record number, but usually we like 80 to 90. And, we have this experience for these kids. I mean, we're out in the middle of nowhere, okay? We're out way off the grid. We make our own power, our own water, our own, septic, everything. And so it's an experience for these kids to leave a city of 2.5 million people and go to this place that's, out in the middle of nowhere. And they can really meet God. And this is what it looks like. This is our dining hall here on our left. We have our campfire. 2 of the cabins. There's 3 more that's over here on this side of the picture for the kids. This is the lower part of the camp. Soccer field, the swimming pool, solar panels. Behind the solar panels is a gym. I don't have a picture of the gym inside, but it's basketball and indoor soccer. The best part of the camp, like I said, is the worship time. We have worship in the morning and we have worship in the evening. We have small groups. What's really, I think, where the rubber meets the road is where these kids can break into small groups every single morning after the morning worship, and they can really break down what their issues are. In this large group is great. We can sing and get all excited and hear about a message. But then in the small groups, we have about 45 minutes where these kids, really, some of these kids, they're like, I'm not going to talk. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to tell you what my problems are. But by the end of the week, they're just bawling and just like, I need Jesus. I need this in my life. I need to be like you. is basically what they're saying. This is Audie, the guy here in the front, his brother Robert. They're from the village down the road from the camp. So they know this area. They're both Romanians, and they basically run the camp now. Audie is a pastor. He went to seminary, so he's the perfect guy for this job. You know, we play games. It's just super fun. It's like an American camp that we all kind of understand because we're Americans, but for Romanians, this is like outer space. I mean, this is like nobody does this. And they come to this camp and they're just in October they're already telling us we can't wait to go to camp next year, and so it's really a fun time for these kids. You know, we have campfires every night, and I mean, we just have this facility now with, you know, party lights and, you know, the campfire and marshmallows and making s'mores, and, you know, these kids see this in movies, but they don't ever get to experience it. And they go home, they go back to the orphanage and they're just like, blah, I'm going crazy. So, as, you know, somebody that's an engineer, my thing is building stuff, and Bruce and Wayne and others, you know, that's your gig too. So you can see the type of construction that we do. These are cabins that we built for the Ukrainians last year, post and beam type construction. In Romania, everything's built out of concrete. So this is a totally foreign concept to them. And all the Romanians come by and they just look at this and think we're crazy. Like, you can't build buildings out of wood. But of course we can. It's no problem. So there's one of my daughters. She grew up in Romania. She was 7 years old when she came to Romania with us. But anyway, that's the kind of work we do there.
Do you still cut, your sawmill still?
The sawmill still works. We still use it. It's not as efficient. We used to, I mean, these guys remember when we used to buy logs, and we used to make our own lumber from logs, which is super fun. But
Let me tell you, a 6x6 is a 6x6. It's not 5.5 by 5. And a 2x4 is a real 2x4.
Right.
And that's heavy stuff, especially those real 16-foot tall things.
Right. So in Romania, you can't go down to Home Depot and buy a 2x6. I mean, they just don't have that there because they don't really build with wood. And so what you have to do is get rough cut lumber, is what we do now, because we got so much scrap from the sawmill that we just had firewood coming out our ears. So we just said, you know what, that's just too much work and effort. And so now I buy 2x10s rough cut from a guy that he'll deliver 300 of these, and then we'll put them on the sawmill and make them into 2x4s, 2x6s, 2x8s, whatever we want. And so that's what we build these buildings out of. So these three buildings right here, we built them in 61 days last year. So that's why I'm a little bit overwhelmed this year, because this was such an intense experience. Just those 61 days alone, this was like 10 to 14 hour days. It was just plain old crazy. We've upped our game a little bit as far as the interiors of these buildings. These are all the Ukrainian cabins that we built last year. A typical bedroom. This is the kitchen area and their kind of dining and living room area. And I'll talk more about that later. Like I said, we're not on the grid, so we have to make our own power. We now have 31 solar panels and lithium batteries and the whole deal. So we can generate, 30 kilowatts of power a day. So on a sunny day. We do have a backup generator, but we don't use that very often anymore. Okay, so everybody knows about the Ukrainian war. Initially on February 24th, when the war started, I just really felt God speaking to me personally about this. And I approached our team of missionaries and I just said, we need to do something. And so in early March, we started talking about what we're going to do about the situation, where we're going to put them. And so I said, well, we have a camp. We've got 100 beds at this camp. Unfortunately, it's a camp designed for summer. It's not designed for March. March, we still have snow on the ground. And so I said, all we need is some heat, we need some insulation, we just need a few things. And I just sent out a Facebook message, you know, hey, you know, we're stepping forward and, you know, we need some donations for, you know, this, that, and this. And I mean, people just responded like crazy. And so we were able to buy pellet stoves. We bought 10 pellet heaters and put them in some of the cabins, did some insulation. And so most of these original people that were at the camp, this picture is in May, they were from the northern part of the country, from Kyiv and that area that was initially attacked. Most of these people went back to Ukraine as Russia started focusing on the southern part of the country. And then we've got a bunch of refugees from the southern part of the country. So they came in from different ways, and I mean, that's a whole long story. But anyway, they created quite a little community. Usually there was only 2 or 3 people in this group that spoke English. They all spoke Ukrainian and Russian, and they didn't know each other, and they were kind of put together in this weird situation where they were at this camp. You know, they didn't have cars, they didn't have a way to go anywhere. I mean, they were stuck here, and I told them that when I picked them up at the border. I was like, you know, if you want to come here, I had a little flip book with some pictures, and I, you know, most of them didn't speak English, so it was difficult to kind of like, hey, you know, you want to go here? And
Steve, you just met these, you didn't know who was coming. You just went to the border and said you needed a place to live, and it was luck of the draw of who you got. Wow. So you had no idea, you went on faith, and you had no idea who was mixed in with this group and brought them into your home. Wow.
Now, some of them, I mean, we do have internet here, and they were able to speak to their husbands and speak to their families and people back in the country, and they said, hey, this guy is really cool, and this place is really cool, and he can come get you, you know. So we did set up some meetings with some of the people that they knew, but most of these people, they didn't know each other, and they definitely didn't know us. And surprisingly, you know, I guess I'll just say one thing. When I thought of the word refugee, I'm always thinking of people from like Africa or, you know, the Middle East that were like poor and destitute and like, you know, trying to escape poverty or war or whatever. Most of these people have college educations. And it was almost more sad to see their situation. They had pictures, they're on Facebook. Hey, last year we went on vacation to Lebanon or, you know, somewhere, you know, and it's like, it really hit home with me. Like, these are people like that I can relate to, that have educations and have kids and have nice apartments and, you know, had a life, you know, like a life like mine. And so it was really hard for me. Grandmothers, obviously there's no men. I mean, they're all mothers and grandparents, kids. I mean, the kids, you know, the kids this age, they just thought it was a blast. I mean, what better place to be a refugee than at camp? They just had a blast. The moms, they would spread out at night and get on their cell phones and talk to their husbands, and they would just cry, and it was just really, really hard.
Point out, Candy, your wife.
What's that?
Your
Oh yeah,
wife.
sorry. The girl in the middle, that's my wife, and we'll get into Maya here, the little girl with a Gap sweatshirt. We're going to talk about her in a minute.
Were the men in the service?
They were, all the men are in the service. I mean, a couple of guys, husbands, were actually in the regular army, and so they had more information than some of the other men. But some of these men were like the husbands were, you know, lawyers, and I mean, they were educated as well, and they were put into service. So everybody was kind of in the service. This particular family ended up moving to England. I mean, there were some families that took this opportunity to get out of Ukraine indefinitely. And so there was 2 or 3 that went to England, and one family is still in Romania trying to get to the US. So, okay. So, here's another thing. We had all kinds of things going on last year. Cami and I, like Bruce said, we have 4 daughters that are all grown and, you know, have their own families now. And we always thought it'd be fun to adopt a Romanian child. And when our youngest graduated from high school in 2014, you know, almost 10 years ago, we just thought the Lord, come on, we prayed like, come on, we would really like to do this. And it just never happened. It just never happened. And so, well, Lord, okay, fine, that's great. Then we turned 50 and it's like, well, yeah, I guess we're too old now and blah, blah, blah. So what happened, I'll just tell you this story super briefly. One of the girls that we knew at the orphanage from 2003 when she was 3 years old, got pregnant when she was 17. She left the orphanage when she was 15 and, got mixed up with the wrong people and, the whole story. And so she had this baby with a drug dealer and it was just a horrible situation. Well, anyway, we took care of this child and supported him and his birth mother, Christina. And Christina just continued to make poor choices and got involved in the wrong people and blah, blah, blah. And so it was 2019. It was the last year that I was here in the States. And my wife and I were both in the States at the time when we got a phone call from her that she was in Germany and she was 6 months pregnant and she wanted to have an abortion. And I was like, you're not having an abortion. We'll figure something out. And then she called us back 3 or 4 weeks later. We were still in the States and I was preparing to come back and she said, this is not good. I want to kill myself. Don't kill yourself. It's going to be okay. We're going to come back from the States, and in the first week in March, she joined us, November, in our home. We took her in, and she had been not to the doctor. She'd been smoking a half a pack of cigarettes a day, and only thing she was eating was potato chips. And she was now 7 months pregnant. And we're like, don't worry, it's gonna be okay. We're gonna take you to the doctor. We're gonna get this sorted. Just relax. And so she was living with us and we were making phone calls, taking her to the doctor, eating good food and not smoking and it's like, all right. And we were looking for a place for this child to go and we the doors weren't opening that we thought were gonna open. And it's like, the last thing we're gonna do is this child is not gonna go back to the orphanage, right? Like, that would be awful. And so it was about the middle of December and I told Cammie, I said, so why don't we adopt this child? And we'll sort it out later. And my wife just started crying. She's like, man, that would be so awesome. And so we're like, all right, cool. The Lord has spoken to us and we're gonna do this. I'm like, all right, fine. So we met with Christina, her mother, the next morning, because she was living in our house. And we said, what if we adopted this child? And she just started crying because she only had a 4th grade education. In Romania, it's a big, long story, but your education can stop at any point along the way. And so she had a 4th grade education, and education was very important to her. And she knew that if we adopted this child, that this child would get a great education because we're Americans, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, this is Maya. She's 3 years old now, and she came home from the hospital, and she's only lived with us from the very beginning. We're still in contact with her birth mother, Christina, and I'm happy to say that she's making better decisions. She's not involved. She has 2 Albanian husbands. I mean, just to give you an idea about her life. I mean, it's crazy. And so now she's going to the Bible study that Anna's leading, and her life is getting turned around. Maya is currently with us in the United States. The Romanian adoption is complete. Now we're working on the American side of things with the green card and getting her immigrated to the United States. Unfortunately, we can't go back to Romania with her during this process. So we have to stay here until that's done, which is going to be like 12 months. And so we're kind of on an extended furlough. We were planning on only being here. We've never taken a furlough the whole 20 years we've lived in Romania. Our daughter, who was the youngest at the time we moved there, was 3 years old. And when she graduated from high school, we added up all the weeks that we had been in America, and it was 17 weeks. So we took very few trips back here to the United States. And so we're finally taking a long break. My parents are 87 and they're not doing so well. So we're living in their basement and we're taking care of them and we're getting Maya's paperwork sorted. And so anyway, that was a lot longer than I thought. So we have 12 minutes now for questions. Yes.
I would like to know how you do mundane things like water, sewage, and garbage with all those people in that camp.
That's a really good question, and I can tell you a lot about it. But the short answer is, we had a team come from Latvia, of all places, and we were digging a well down by the swimming pool down there, and they hit an underground spring. It was like an artesian spring. I mean, it literally started filling up the hole that they were digging, and they had to jump out. And it was just one of those God things that provided this underground spring that produces about 10 gallons of water a minute. So we have just an incredible amount of water that all I have to do is get pumped up to some tanks that I put on that hill behind our camp. And like during the daytime when we have sunshine and the pump can run on the solar energy, and then it's just gravity down. We have, I was gonna figure out how many we have, but we have like 15 showers and 20 toilets, and I mean, it's ridiculous the amount of water that we go through. Thousands of gallons of water every day. And it's all from that spring. The power is from the solar. And the thing is that this whole area that the camp is located has these little pebbles. It's all glacier deposit. If you're a geologist, you know that there's these rocks that are all around. And when you dig a hole, you find all these like river rocks up on the top of the hill even. And so when you dig a hole for a septic tank, it's just the perfect ground to percolate, and you don't have to do any leach lines or anything. You just dump it in this hole and away it goes. So anyway, it's been great as far as just the perfect place. And as Wayne knows, I mean, when we do concrete, you know, the creek provides this wonderful mix of sand and gravel, and all we have to do is buy the cement, and we have our little mixer, and we just do our little thing. So everything is there that we need.
So the creek still has bugs in it, cause I went down there and took a bath in that creek in a bathing suit, they got all in my bathing suit.
They're waiting for you, Wayne. Yes.
Yeah, so, you know, as you know, the states, you got the bureaucracy out the yin yang to get anything built or whatever. Do you have that issue over, you know, for the camp and all?
We do.
Regulations and
We
stuff?
do. They do have regulations like a normal place, but unfortunately we build these wooden buildings that they have no idea how to, I mean, the architect, well, I went to an architect and he designed a concrete building. I said, no, dude, we're not doing concrete, we're doing wood. Literally had no idea, like no idea. Like the loads and the
Still
strings.
Soviet days.
Yeah,
So
and
they
so.
think everything was good.
Right, and so unfortunately for us, we went to the mayor's office early, like when we bought the land, and we started a good relationship with him. And he's very proud to have Americans, you know, just right up the road from the village. And so he's been our spokesperson. He's been, you know, protecting us. And not only the building permit people, which we don't have to deal with because, you know, the mayor kind of, you know, greases the palms and does the things for us, but also the Ministry of Health. You know, you have to have, if you're gonna run a camp, you have to have a kitchen that's just so, and blah, 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 which we don't have. And so, you know, that's been a protection. Well, I used to stay up all night worrying about these things. And I just said, Lord, you know, you're gonna take care of this and it's gonna be fine. So the buildings haven't fallen down, you know, no one's gotten seriously injured, and we're doing good. So the answer is yes, there is, but in our case, not really.
How many weeks of camp do you have?
We have between 6 and 8 weeks every summer. So, and not all those weeks are orphanage weeks. We have 2 weeks for the local kids in the village and in the surrounding areas. So we have some goodwill with the local community, and so they really like that. And it's free. So we don't charge, people like you make it so that we can do it for free. And every week of camp costs about $2,000. So we spend around $15,000 every summer putting on these camps. And it's great. These kids now that have grown up in the local area, going to camp, are now in high school and college, and now they're our staff that we can, they volunteer. They're anxious to come and help.
So do children come back year after year?
The local ones do. Now the kids at the orphanage, you know, they come because they're still in the orphanage, but as they disappear, then, you know, we can't do anything about that. Yeah.
Do you speak Romanian?
Da.
After 23.
Nu frate bine, but puțin.
Do they,
So-
Yes.
What's your biggest need? What do you need now? So to keep this thing going, do you have ample donors, or what can Shady Grove be doing in addition to what we're doing now?
What's happened during the pandemic is that we had no teams. We had no teams in 2020, 2021, and 2022. We had some teams scheduled for last year, but because of the war, nobody wanted to come. They were afraid the nuclear fallout was gonna, drift over Romania, and anyway. So teams is the thing that we could really use, because what teams do is they come back and they energize the churches. Like for example, your church, if you sent a team of 6 people, 8 people, whatever, they would come back and tell everybody at your church, oh man, it was so great, we did this, blah, 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 blah. And I think that's the big reason why you guys have supported us for 14 years, is because people have physically come to Romania.
Do you need them so when you say the teams, do you need the teams to come in the off-season to build, or to come to your camp?
Both. And your church is more of a construction type church, which is great. You're the only one. So I'm all about construction, and there's always things to build. There's like the Ukrainian cabins. There's lots of things that we want to do to continue doing that. So, but we also have interns. If you have a high school or a college student, or you yourself, like you guys came for as interns, how many times? So you can never be too old to be an intern. And you can come as an individual, or as a couple, as a family. We've had family units come, we've had church groups, obviously. So however you want to come is great with us. And generally, coming in the spring, summer, or fall. Winter is not recommended. So that's the primary thing, is teams. Obviously, money is always a factor. Financially, we honestly, with the Ukrainian war, people just opened their pocketbooks last year, and I'm a little nervous that this year people like overgave last year, and we may not see a drop off in donations. So that's another reason why I'm going around the country this year and saying, hey,
Were you
let's
able
keep
to
going.
buy that piece of property off to the side there on the left I know you wanted to expand a little bit.
Right. Unfortunately, in Romania, the property ownership is extremely complicated. Like when communism fell, you went back to the Department of whatever, and they would look through your records and say, okay, your family owns this land. But then when that, let's say the father who owned the land died, left it with the 6 children, and now they own 1/6 of the land, and you know how that works. And so the land immediately next to us, it is owned by all these brothers, and if just one of the brothers doesn't want to sell, then it can't be sold. So it's very complicated legally to buy land in Romania, and we were fortunate to get the 24 acres that we got. And I don't see us expanding anytime soon, unfortunately. But there's still plenty of things we can do with the land that we have. Yes?
do you, do Romanians speak a language that's Romanian, or?
It is Romanian.
Or it is?
Right.
So,
It's the closest language to Latin there is spoken today.
right.
It's very similar to Latin. My mother took Latin in high school, and she goes, oh my gosh, this is great.
A lot of the countries over there, they speak a language for the country, but then they try to speak like English, because this country's kind of small and they travel around a lot.
Right.
Are you trying to teach English to any of these kids?
And even the kids in the orphanage, everybody understands that if you speak English, your opportunities in life are much, much greater. And so if they hear the word American, so yeah, they want to hear about Jesus, and they want the whole spiritual side of things, but they also want to learn English. And so like the Bible studies, we call it Romanglish.
No.
It's kind of both.
What do you do with the property other than summer? What do you do with it the rest of the year?
The cabins that you saw that we built for the Ukrainians, like right now there's no Ukrainians in there. And my vision has always been for 10 years to have a retreat center there. And so the cabins that we built for the Ukrainians, we had in mind that this would be a self-contained place where we could have up to 20 people come for a retreat. So we would love to have groups come in the spring and the fall in addition to our summer camps, but unfortunately we're always building. And so like, now that we've built those cabins, we could have retreats there. And so that's, my vision is, like, we bought this land, we've spent all this money on this building, a summer camp, we definitely want to use it for more than those 8 weeks. And so that's a big push for me, is to use that land for retreats. And other mission organizations need a place. It's expensive, as you can imagine, to take, 20 people to go to a retreat center, and, Campus Crusade, World Vision, all these mission organizations in Romania, they all spend big money to go to a retreat center. And like, well, they could come here for free, So we partner with a lot of organizations. So that's my vision, is to see the camp used from basically March through November.
What's the average temperature in winter?
Think of Omaha, Nebraska. That's the closest temperature to what it's like at camp. I looked it up online, and I looked at all the major cities in the United States, and Omaha, Nebraska has the same temperatures and rainfall and snowfall, and so that's what it's like.
In other words, cold.
It's pretty cold. Yes.
You say you're off the grid there, and you have at least 100 people there. How do you feed these people? Is all the food basically outsourced to the local farmers, or do you also have garden plots at the campsite to sustain some of this?
I would love to do the first two things you mentioned, but right now we're on the last thing you mentioned. We have to drive an hour to the big city to buy all the food. We have a village, like I said, where the mayor is and all the kids, but they have no food. They don't have enough food. For example, we go through enough chicken in a week that they don't have that much chicken, and so I got to go all the way to the big city. So I personally buy all the food.
So how often do you go to the big city?
Twice a week. Twice a week.
Do you make your own bread?
We have, but it's too much. They eat a lot of bread there. We go through 40 loaves a day. We go through about 200 loaves of bread a week. So it would be a lot of bread makers.
I hope you have a better vehicle than what you have when I was over there.
The blue car has finally died, and it is enshrined at the camp. It sits off to the side, and us old timers remember those days. But it's been upgraded to the next level of Dacia vehicles. But it's a little nicer. But it has the same rack on top, so that I overload
Yes, you do.
daily.
One time we were there, the thing broke down, and they had to tow it from there to Bucharest.
Which is about
With a
140
rope or
miles.
something. All
With a
the way
rope.
from the camp to Bucharest. They had to tow
We were
it.
just talking about that last night.
Then it wasn't a tow truck,
It was the other car, yeah. With a rope. Fortunately, my wife, it's a trick to be the guy in the back that rides the brake and makes sure the rope doesn't, So my wife is good at that, and she grew up on a farm. She knows about all that kind of stuff. So we got that to Bucharest.
Do all your children, after they grew up and went their separate ways, do all of them live in Romania, or have they dispersed to other areas?
They all live in the U.S. here. Yeah. They all went to college here in the U.S. and now they do all kinds of things. They all speak Romanian though, so that's something. All right, I got 1 minute.
You live at the camp all winter?
We do. We live there year round when we're not on furlough, but normally we've lived at the camp for the last 4 years. And I tell you what, the pandemic was a horrible thing, but if you got to live there during the pandemic, it was absolutely gorgeous. And we felt bad about having to stay there. Romania went on full lockdown. I don't know about here, but we couldn't go past the little village. And with Maya, we had formula and diapers of a certain type that we wanted her to have that we couldn't get in the little village. Normally we buy that in Bucharest, which we couldn't go to because they wouldn't let us. So we had to have things mailed, and it was a big thing. So anyway, but we love
Who's
the
running the
camp.
show now? While you're here for a year, who's keeping the facility going?
There's nobody there. I mean, we do have security cameras. We got Starlink last year, which gives us broadband, and so we can do cameras and lots of fun things. And so we kind of keep tabs on it with the cameras, and the police the little police station there in the village knows that we're not there, and
Somebody gonna cut the grass this summer?
yeah, somebody will cut the grass, yeah.
Well,
That's,
It's Bruce's job.
no, he's talking about right now.
No, but the summer.
There'll be camps, oh yeah. They're already planned and we're already, Bible verses are chosen, themes are chosen, decorations are being planned, and
So does my brother.
it's gonna be great.